Myself, Dr. Hanuman Prasad. I am working as an assistant professor in the Department of Chemistry at Institute of Aeronautical Engineering, IARE, which is located at Dundigal. The topic that I am going to discuss is from Module 5, Gender and Culture. And the name of the topic that I am going to discuss in today's session is Gender and Development Issues, Part 2. Okay? And the contents that I am going to discuss as a part of this topic are role of gender in development, why gender is a development issue, role of women in development with three theories. The three theories are WID, WAD, GAD. WID stands for Women in Development. WAD stands for Women and Development. GAD stands for Gender and Development. And finally, references. Let's look at each and every content in detail. First of all, role of gender in development. Gender plays a role in development in several ways, such as gender equality, gender awareness, education about sex and relationships, gender constancy, and gender mainstream. These five are the ways in which gender plays a role in development. Let's look at all these ways individually or together. First way to achieve where the gender plays a role in development is gender equality, which is a fundamental human right and a key component of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Gender equality can contribute to the development of societies and nations in many ways. It can improve, it means gender equality can improve household income, and it can reduce poverty, and it can contribute to economic growth of our nation. Okay, it can improve household income, it can reduce poverty, and it can contribute to the economic growth of our nation. It can also help, means gender equality can also help reduce gender-based violence and gender-based discrimination, and it can improve social development. Okay, so this is the way where gender equality contributes role to the development. Okay, and next way is gender awareness. Awareness about gender can help people understand and correct stereotypes, prejudices, and discrimination in the workplace. Okay, so this is the way gender plays a role to the development. And the next way is education about sex and relationships. It can help girls develop their sexual and reproductive health as well as their gender roles and relations. Okay, so this is the third way, education about sex and relationships, especially it can help girls develop their sexual and reproductive health as well as their gender roles and relations. And the fourth way that I have shown is gender constancy. It is a stage in a child's cognitive development. When they understand their gender as a fixed and unchangeable identity. Gender is a fixed and unchangeable identity. So don't look to change the gender. Don't bother about that. Whatever the gender you are, you go ahead and look for the progress. Look for the achievement what you are intended for. Okay. So that is how the role of gender towards development can be achieved by gender constancy. And the fifth way that I have shown is gender mainstreaming. It can help address gender inequality by ensuring women have equal access to opportunities and are active participants in the economy. Gender mainstreaming means both the gender are equal, male and female, men and women, okay, and boys and girls, and also masculine and feminine are equally important. So that is what is the gender mainstreaming deals. So it can help address gender inequality by ensuring women have equal access to opportunities and are active participants in the economy. Okay, so that is how gender plays a role towards development. Okay, so role of gender in development by gender mainstream. Now let's look at the next content. Why gender is a development issue. Let's look at this. The word development entails the notion of progress in all spheres of society, such as economic sphere, political sphere, social sphere, and cultural sphere. Okay? So, what does the word development indicate or it represents? The word development entails the notion of progress in all the spheres of society, such as political, economic, social, and cultural. Okay? I hope you are getting what the development indicates in terms of gender. Okay? And next, development of a local community, such as the one in which you live, cannot take place in isolation. If you are separately working for any other thing, anything that you are looking for or that you are intended for, it is difficult to progress in that particular field because you are in a local community, because you are the one in which you live. Okay, so cannot take place in isolation. It must be teamwork. Okay, so that is how gender is a development issue. Okay, it is always influenced by, it means gender is always influenced by our development is always influenced by political and economic decisions taken at higher levels, whether regional, national, or international. Okay, development is always influenced by political and economic decisions, political and economic decisions taken at higher levels, whether regional level or national level or international level. I hope you are understanding why gender is a development issue. Okay, so together in isolation a person cannot achieve the goal because it is a teamwork, and it is always influenced by political and economic decision taken at higher levels, whether at regional level or national level or international levels. Okay, so all the people together can contribute to the development. That is why gender is a development issue. Okay, I hope you all understood why gender is a development issue. Yes, now let's look at the role of women in development. As I said, there are three theories. Since 1970, theorists have tried to devise a numerous strategies, means number of strategies, to address the problem of gender difference in development and particularly to women disadvantage. Okay, so there are three important theories that have been developed to address the gender development issues, or to address the gender in development issues, especially the role of women in development. Okay, in gender also the role of women in development. The first theory is women in development, WID is the short form, and the second theory is women and development, WAD is the short form, and the third theory is gender and development, GAD is the short form. Now let's look at each of these theories in detail. Okay, the first theory is WID, women in development. So this WID approach calls for greater attention to women in development policy and practice, and emphasizes the need to integrate them into the development processes. Okay, so what the WID approach calls for? It calls for greater attention to women in development policy and practice, and emphasizes the need to integrate them into the development processes. WID evolved in the early 1970s, means not too much late, 1971, 72, 73, like that. In the early 1970s, that is called, okay, as a reaction to women being seen as passive beneficiaries of development. So, as the women lie as passive beneficiaries of development, by seeing that scenario, as a part of reaction to that action, in the early 1970s, WID is developed by theorists, Women in Development. The movement identified other problems such as women's disadvantaged position in education, health, and employment. Okay, so what are the problems? Women's disadvantaged position in education, health, and employment. Okay, WID writers concluded that women are being sidelined in the development process. So they sought, means they obtained practical methods to improve women's material conditions. So the theorists, means WID writers, concluded that women were being sidelined in the development process. So they seek practical methods to improve women's material conditions. Okay, so they obtained practical methods to improve women's material conditions. Okay, so that is the WID writers concluded. And in continuation, with the help of female academic pressure group, what is the group name? Female Academic Pressure Group. With the help of Female Academic Pressure Group, WID theory soon became a descriptor for any policy that insisted on bringing women into the development process, which led to the declaration of the 1976 to 1985 period as the United Nations Decade for Women. Okay, what is the United Nations Decade for Women? The period of 1976 to 1985. So if you count 1976, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85. There are 10 years. Okay, so which is a decade. So it is considered as United Nations Decade for Women. Okay, so the theme is equality, development, and peace. So that is why the role of women in development we are studying as a particular concept. Okay, so equality, development, and peace. So these are the themes of United Nations Decade for Women, 1976 to 1985. Okay, the programs informed by WID approach addressed women's practical needs by, for example, creating employment and income generating opportunities and improving access to credit and to education. Okay, so the programs informed by WID approach addressed women's practical needs by creating employment and income generating opportunities and improving access to credit and to education. So that is how WID approach address women's practical needs. So that is how women played a role in development. Okay, in gender, men and women are there. Masculine or feminine. Masculine corresponds to men or boys. Feminine corresponds to females or girls. Okay, so feminine, female, girl. So especially the woman plays a role in development. These kind of WID approach. Okay, by creating employment and income generating opportunities and improving access to credit and to education. Okay, I hope you all understood what is the role of women in development as a part of WID theory, Women in Development. Now let's look at the next theory, Women and Development, WAD. Okay. The theoretical base for the WAD theory was the neo-colonial dependence model. What is the theory base? What is the theoretical base for the WAD model or WAD approach or WAD theory is neo-colonial dependence model. Neo means new. Colonial. Colony means the place, the area where we are living. Neo-colonial dependence model. Okay, so this is the theoretical base for the WAD approach, Women and Development approach or WAD theory. Its proponents argued that developing countries are modern versions of colonies because they are economically dependent on their rich country trading partners. So they are forced by this system intentionally or unintentionally to experience unequal and exploitative relationships with the developed capitalist countries. So once again, what the proponents of WAD theory argued? They argued that developing countries are modern versions of colonies because they are economically dependent on their rich country trading partners. So they are forced by the system, intentionally or unintentionally, to experience unequal and exploitative relationships with the developed capitalist countries. Okay. In this situation, men and women alike are in disadvantaged positions because they are all victims of international economic and financial structures that cause unequal distribution of wealth. Which cause unequal distribution of wealth. Wealth means money, asset. Okay. So that is what is the theoretical base, neo-colonial dependence model. Okay. So this is at international level, economic and financial structures which cause unequal distribution of wealth. Okay. Now, what is the approach to overcome this? The WAD approach argues that women are deeply integrated in these structures. These structures means economic and financial structures. Okay. And no amount of superficial manipulation will solve their problems. What is required for women to advance is the removal of the inequitable structures and relationships. So, what is required for women to advance is the removal of the inequitable structures and relationships. The needed reforms are both international and domestic and must be at the political and institutional level as well as the economic level. As well as the economic level. Okay. So, what is required for a woman to advance is nothing the removal of the inequitable structures and relationships. The needed reforms are just both international and domestic level. Domestic means household level and must be at the political and institutional levels as well as the economic level. Okay. A further WAD argument is that since men have failed to achieve these equitable relations or relationships, which are the basis of the emancipation of all people, emancipation means of freeing someone from the dominance of other person or the control of other person, means he should be free from all the forces. He should have his own rights. So that is emancipation. So the basis for the emancipation is equitable relationships. Okay. So women would do better than men if given the chance. Women could achieve the desired equitable development on their own. Means if they got emancipation, definitely they would do better than men if given the chance. And women could obviously achieve the desired equitable development on their own. Means just what we have to do, we have to emancipate them. Means we have to make them free from all the controls and all the unwanted responsibilities. Okay. So this is the further argument of W. That is how women can play the role towards development or in the development, okay, as a part of WAD theory, women and development theory. Now let's look at the third theory, GAD, gender and development. GAD approach focuses on the socially constructed basis of differences between men and women and emphasizes the need to challenge existing gender roles and relations. Okay, once again, what gender and development GAD approach focuses? It focuses on the socially constructed basis of differences between men and women and emphasizes the need to challenge existing gender roles and relations. Okay, GAD emerged from a frustration with the lack of progress of WAD policy in changing women's lives and in influencing the broader development agenda. Okay, how the GAD emerged? Gender and development theory emerged from a frustration with the lack of development in WAD theory or WAD policy or WAD approach in changing women's lives and in influencing the broader development agenda. Now, GAD challenged the WAD focus on women in isolation, seeing women's real problems as the imbalance of power between men and women. Okay, so GAD challenged the WAD focus, women in development focus, on women in isolation, especially women in isolation. Those women who are not participating in teamwork, though they are independently surviving. So GAD challenged them with a special focus of WAD theory, seeing women's real problem as the imbalance of power between women and men. Okay, and GAD approaches generally aim to meet both women's practical gender needs and more strategic gender needs. So GAD approaches mainly or generally aim to meet both the women's practical gender needs and more strategic gender needs. Women's practical gender needs as well as more strategic gender needs by challenging existing divisions of labor or power relations. Okay, I hope you understood where the GAD approaches aim. The GAD approaches aim to meet two things: women's practical gender needs and more strategic gender needs. How they aim? By challenging existing divisions of labor or power relations. Okay, and in continuation of GAD, the concept of GAD, gender and development, looks at the gender division of labor for both productive and reproductive work, gender division of labor for both productive and reproductive work, access to and control of resources and benefit, the specific social, economic, and environmental factors that influence the division of labor and access to resources. GAD tries to analyze the roles and contribution of all members of a community, not just women, all members of a community. Okay, that is why it is gender and development, it is not women and development. Okay, so it is not just women. To the development process and focuses on differences and disparities in their conditions. Okay, so where the concept of GAD looks at, it looks at the gender division of labor for both productive and reproductive works, and it looks at access to and control of resources and benefit. So resources should not be used in appropriate way, means they should not be misused. Okay, so there should be a control of resources and there must be access. After getting access, there must be a control of resources and benefit. And the third, it looks at the specific social, economic, and environmental factors that influence the division of labor and access to resources. Okay, all these factors, social, economic, and environmental factors. And also, GAD tries to analyze the roles and contribution of all members of a community to the development process and focuses on differences and disparities in their condition. So that is how, especially women play roles towards development. Okay, So that is why we are studying the role of women in development as a part of gender and development issue, which is a part of gender sensitization. Okay, I hope you all understood what we have discussed so far. So today we have discussed the roles of gender in development, and why gender is a development issue, and what are the roles of women in development. Three theories we have discussed: WID, WAD, GAD. Women in development, and gender in development. So finally, these are the issues of development by the gender. So that is why this topic name is gender and development issues. And the references that I followed were Gender Studies by Kadambari, Gender Sensitization by Rajalakshmi Kalyani, and Gender and Development in India for the Current Issues by U. Kalpagaram. Okay, and finally, thank you very much for your kind attention and all the very best.
Like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.